Welcome everyone, happy to see you again, it's Deep and High. Today we are going to learn about the coarse aggregate in concrete. And let we start. Coarse aggregate is simply called as aggregate. Coarse aggregate is one of the main components in any concrete mixture, for gaining the volume, and as well as the strength for any concrete structure. Coarse aggregate is the metals, collected from the ground deposits of rocks. Technically, the materials retained over the 4.75 mm sieve is called as coarse aggregate, and passing through the 4.75 mm sieve is called as fine aggregate.
Why we should use the coarse aggregate in concrete mix. And the reasons are following. Aggregate is one of the most important elements to give the volume, and as well as the strength. Based on the grade of concrete, aggregates are making up 60% to 80% of the volume of concrete, and 70% to 85% mass of concrete. Cement can be affected by the shrinkage, but including the aggregate in the mix can control the shrinkage level, and cracking. Aggregate is important, because of maintaining the thermal property, elastic property, dimension stability, and volume stability of concrete structures. Without aggregates, cost and strength of concrete structures will be increased and decreased. So, to maintain the economical concrete structure, aggregate is essential.
Based on the size of aggregates are having various name, and they are following. Fine or crushed gravel are having particle size of 4.75 mm to 8 mm. Medium or partly crushed gravel are having the particle size of 8 mm to 16 mm. Coarse or uncrushed gravel are taking the particle size of 16 mm to 64 mm. Cobbles are having particle size of 64 mm to 256 mm, and boulders are having particle size of above 256 mm.
Coarse aggregate with varying particle size with varying application are following. 4 shell roof and thin members are suggested for the maximum size of 10 mm. 4 RCC works such as beams, column, and slabs are suggested for the maximum size of 20 mm. 4 RCC foundation works are suggested for the maximum size of 40 mm. 4 PCC works are suggested from 40 mm to 75 mm of particle size of coarse aggregate. For airport asphalt surface, the nominal maximum size of 25 mm is suggested. For railway tracks, 50 mm is suggested to use as a ballast for the cushion portion.
7 different tests are to be done for the coarse aggregate. Tests are followed by IS 460/1962. Crushing test. Abrasion test. Impact test. Soundness test. Shape test. Specific gravity and water absorption test. Bitumen adhesion test.
Crushing test. Crushing strength of aggregates are followed by the IS 2386 part. Dry aggregates of 12.5 mm to 10 mm is placed in a cylinder, and 40 tons of load is gradually applied. It is 4 tons per minute in compression testing machine, which is simply called as CTM. The crushed sample is sieved in 2.36 mm and weight passing material through it is weighed as W2. Weight of total sample is taken as W1. Aggregate crushing value equals to W1 divided by W2, and multiplied by 100 to get the value in percentage. Less than 10% result value is taken as good aggregate.
Abrasion test. Test carried out for hardness of aggregate. Is 2386 part is followed. Aggregate of 5 to 10 kilograms of weight is placed in the rotating circular drum, with balls of 48 mm diameters, and weight of balls having 340 to 445 kilograms. The cylinder is locked, and rotated for 500 to 1000 revolutions at 30 to 33 rpm. The test sample is sieved in 1.7 mm sieve, and passed fraction is expressed as percentage on total weight of sample. Maximum of 40% is allowed for WBM, and maximum of 35% is allowed for bituminous concrete.
Impact test. Impact test is carried to determine the impact strength of aggregate. Aggregate of 10 mm to 12.5 mm is placed in the cylindrical steel cup. It should filled by 3 layers, and each layers is tamped for 25 number of blows. Metal hammer of weight 14 kg with free fall height of 38 cm is allowed suddenly, with 15 number of blows. The sample is sieved in 2.36 mm, and weight passing is taken as W1, and total weight of sample is taken as W2. Impact value of coarse aggregate is equals to W1 divided by W2, and multiplied by 100. For wearing coarse, should not exceed 30%, for bituminous macadam, up to 35% is allowed, and for the WBM base coarse up to 40% is allowed.
Soundness test. Soundness test is carried for weathering action of aggregate, and followed by IS 2386 Part 5. Aggregates are subjected to 5 cycles of alternate wetting in a saturated solution, either sodium sulfate or magnesium sulfate, for 16 to 18 hours and dried in oven at 105 degrees Celsius to 110 degrees Celsius. After 5 cycles, loss in weight of aggregate is determined, by sieving out all undersized particles, and weighing. The loss in weight should not exceed 12%, when tested with sodium sulfate, and should not exceed 18%, when tested with magnesium sulfate.
Shape test. Shape test is carried for strength and workability. Test is followed with IS 2386 Part 1. The particle shape of aggregate mass is determined by the percentage of flaky and elongated particles in particular volume of aggregate. Flakiness index is defined in percentage by weight of aggregate, whose least dimension is less than 0.6 times their mean size. Elongation index is also defined in percentage by weight of particle, whose greatest dimension is 1.8 times their mean dimension.
Specific gravity test. Weigh the empty mold, and take it as W1. Weigh the sample aggregate which is filled 3/4 volume of mold, and take it as W2. With addition to W2 add the water and fill the bucket, and take it as a W3. Finally weigh mold with completely filled with water, and take it as W4. Input the values in formula to find specific gravity of sample. Specific gravity of coarse aggregate can be determined by the following formula. Specific gravity of aggregate is 2.5 to 3.0, and average value of specific gravity is taken about 2.68.
From this video, what I learned is, even the cost of cement is higher than the cost of aggregates, by twice or thrice. The major strength comes from the aggregates to the concrete structures. Various particle size of coarse aggregate is used for various construction activities, and the tests for coarse aggregate, and their requirements are learned. Thank you everyone. If you like this video, thumbs up and subscribe our channel and keep sharing.